the big story, the main story from the month of June, the beacon, it is the debut of TNA Impact.
Mm-hmm. What a show. And a show that still runs to this very day.
Yeah, we're 900 episodes and 18 years in, and this show's still going. So it is, like, I don't know, it's not to say it's one of the most important moments in wrestling history, but it is one of the longest running pro wrestling television shows that is still running today. And here it is, the moment of Genesis.
Aha. That's not this show, though. We'll get to that eventually. Yeah, I mean, I'm very excited for Impact, A, because it's like 40 minutes long, so that's really good, and B, it looks nice and looks like a top professional wrestling show.
Yeah, so they've moved to the Impact Zone in Orlando, Florida. They have introduced the six-sided ring, which will be their ring going forward.
Oh, thank God.
Does it make a difference to you watching a six-sided ring?
It makes such a difference to watching this show. It's just something about the general aesthetic of it. Like, before it kind of felt like I was watching this weird shindy with, like, random money put into it. Now it feels like I'm watching TNA.
Yeah, so they have the Fox box at the top of the screen. Every match has a 10-minute time limit, except for title matches, which have a 30-minute time limit. If they go to a time limit draw, it will be decided by the week's celebrity judge, which is, frankly, usually Dusty Rhodes.
Or Larry Zbyszko.
It's Dusty or Larry Z. They did, like, the Impact Zone itself does look major league. It looks professional. They have a bit of pyro. They have the green lasers. They have the dual entrance tunnels on either side of the building.
They have the mist shooting up from the ramp.
Yeah, the crowd's super enthusiastic. It is, like, they've done little things to improve the asylum a little bit this month. I think they, like, got new lights and cameras. It does look a little bit better. But just the contrast of going from the Impact Zone, which does look major league and professional, to the Asylum, which still looks a little dingy and downtrodden, is, like, every time I go from an Impact to a pay-per-view, I'm like, oh.
Yeah, but, and then the problem is, and the problem for me watching these shows is, it feels, Impact looks so much better, but it feels like a B show. Like, you're watching it, and it feels like the equivalent of what I imagine would have been watching Explosion. You know what I mean? Like, I watch it and it doesn't feel like anything actually takes place or matters, and none of the stars are on this show. And then the pay-per-view happens, and that's where everything actually takes place.
Yeah, because they have themselves a little bit of a pickle for this period where they're doing both. Because they can't really do the good stuff on TV, and you can argue they're not doing good stuff on pay-per-view either, but that's a different point altogether.
But at least they have stars on those shows.
Yeah, but the idea is the TV is there to sell the pay-per-view, which I think at this stage is probably a mistake on the whole, especially doing that on a week-to-week basis, because at least on a monthly pay-per-view cycle, you can give some stuff to TV that you're not going to do on pay-per-view, whereas on a weekly pay-per-view where you know you have to fill 2 hours every Wednesday, you gotta save some stuff for that, and what ultimately ends up happening is you get a bunch of, like, meaningless squash matches and throwaway X Division matches on TV, and it doesn't also help that they really have no stars.
Well, that's the thing, is, like, it feels like something that would help sell these pay-per-views is if you had prominent, well-known guys like a Raven, like a Jeff Jarrett, like anyone, put them on this show, you know? It would do something for the pay-per-views, but those guys don't even show up. There's like one Sabu tag.
Yeah, and like Jarrett's usually on the show in some capacity, but I don't think Raven has been on Impact at all yet. And part of that we'll talk about, he has been injured this month. He got injured early in the month, then re-injured himself in that Sanjay match. So, like, he hasn't been healthy, but he still hasn't, like, appeared in many angles or anything on Impact. So, like, Raven is probably your number 1 or number 2 star, depending how you view him relative to Jeff Jarrett, particularly during this era.
Or how you view him relevant to Jeff Hardy.
Well, yeah, Jeff is obviously number 1 star, big guy, once he debuts toward the end of the month, but he's not there for the start of the month.
But, like, even something like, I get, like, you know, Jeff is a one that you give away on pay-per-view, but I don't know, I feel like having Jeff Hardy on your TV might do something for you.
They will. They haven't signed Jeff yet, so...
I know, but you had him.
But they wanted the debut on pay-per-view, and we'll talk about Jeff.
With no build.
There's a reason for that.
Ah, good times.
It might be the classic, they weren't entirely 100% sure he'd actually show up, so they did it on no build.
Fair. Well, we say no build, but there was 4 vignettes the night of.
People calling around. It's like, you see these vignettes that are narrated by Jeff Hardy, obviously, for Jeff Hardy, and obviously made by Jeff Hardy if you freaking watch him. That's the most Jeff Hardy, like, esoteric stuff imaginable.
Well, it's his voice.
Yes.
But like, it's like that one episode where RVD debuted, and they just mentioned something about it before the ad break, so that everyone would be like, "Huh."
Except this is a $10 price tag where everyone's like, "Huh." Everyone's like, "Huh." $10.
Do you think they sold any pay-per-views mid-pay-per-view on the premise of people going, "Wait, is that Jeff Hardy?"
Like, if you were to say, did they sell one? Probably.
Yeah.
Probably sold one.
From Matt.
Yeah, especially when you realize it was going to be Hardy against AJ, which I think is a match people would want to see.
Yes, which is a match I was excited to see.
You know, it's very funny. There's a lot of, like, PW Torch are like, how could you give Jeff Hardy 7 minutes with AJ? It's like, what a burial of AJ that this WWE mid-carder comes in and gets 7 minutes. I was like, one, even in 2004, that I think that's off base. But when you look at like who Jeff Hardy is and who he became, that's such a stupid complaint.
Well, it's funny because like knowing, obviously I wasn't there in 2004, but watching it now, I was like, hey, it's cool. It's like two of the aces in company history wrestling each other.
Especially when you look at the reaction Hardy gets, which is fucking enormous.
Yeah, the Asylum made noise.
I do think the Asylum is better this month, and I think it's mostly because...
Oh, do you want to talk about D-Lo versus fucking Monty Brown?
I do think they're gotten to about the idea that they might lose the shows to Orlando, so they're trying again.
Oh, it's like when they started putting takeovers in buildings.
Yeah, it's like, Full Sail is like, no, we will make noise again, we swear.
Please give us the Iron Man match, please.
So yeah, they debuted Impact. It is on the premiere start time of 3 p.m. in the afternoon on Fridays. Not ideal, but better than nothing.
Mm-hmm.
Before we go into the notes about the show, let's talk about the episode itself, the debut episode, which I thought, like, say what you will about the episodes that came after and the degree to which it very quickly became a show with enhancement matches that pushes the pay-per-view. I thought that first episode rocked.
I thought that first episode was kind of like... if you put the entire first year of TNA's ethos into one episode, like, if they had fine-tuned their ideas that they presented in early NWA-TNA pay-per-views, this is kind of what it would have been.
Yeah.
Because you had the focus on the X Division multi-man, you had the tag team title match with America's Most Wanted, you had a cool squash with Abyss and then Shark Boy getting an appearance on the show, and most importantly, you had AJ going over in an X Division multi-man to become the champion. Well, become the number one contender. But it was like kind of some easy early parallels to the first like year of NWA-TNA. It's kind of like they saw that and they're like, well, what do people like from our early presentation? Let's do that again for our first TV.
Yeah, and it's like a very firm reboot where it's like, all right, we're on TV now. Everything, we're kind of starting from scratch. So we're going to put the belt on Jarrett. Ugh. We're going to put the X Division title back on AJ, and we're going to put the tag titles on AMW. So in theory, they're like, we're going to put the belts on, like, historically the best act in each of the divisions and run with it that way.
Which makes sense. Something I did enjoy about this month, and I guess because I don't want to leave this to the end when we're like depressed and tired about talking, so I'll do it now at the start. I thought this month had a lot of good build that had too much space to fill. If this was a 4 TV to a pay-per-view month and they did all the same kind of build, I think that would have led up to one really good pay-per-view. Because I thought you had a lot of cool stories going in there. Ironically, the one that I was least high on was probably the Jarrett and Ron Killing stuff. But I really enjoyed the tag title stuff with the Naturals. I really enjoyed the build to Cash and AJ. I enjoyed the Abyss Eric Watts stuff. I even enjoyed, like, if the Pat Kenny tag stuff was just a mid-card thing leading to a pay-per-view, that would have been a fine thing too.
Jarrett Lynn Scott D'Amore as well.
Yeah, Jarrett Lynn Scott D'Amore would have been a good payoff for the pay-per-view. There was a bunch of stuff that I was like, alright, I'm into this as... like, and then Sabu Raven, right? So there's a lot of stuff that I thought, if this was a condensed thing with not having to fill like 12 hours, this would have been a really good month. But because we're doing pay-per-view every week and a TV every week, they had so much time to fill that everything just got bloated and blown out of proportion, and they had to have the payoffs off on different times because they had to start and get onto the next thing because they had to fill all this time. So going into it, I was like, I actually think the booking-wise, there was a lot of really good stuff this month. It's just the way they're choosing to produce their television and produce their content in general isn't conducive to telling good stories.
They're just stretching themselves, the wrestlers, the stories, and pretty much everything too thin over on average 4 pay-per-views and 4 impacts a month, as opposed to using the impacts to promote the pay-per-views to have payoffs to go back to the impacts. It's just doing that on a week-to-week cycle. It just doesn't work, does it?
Because you're watching these shows and you're like, there is a good pro wrestling company in here. It's just bloated out.
So yes, Impact Episode 1, June 4th, 2004, taped the day before from the Impact Zone in Orlando, Florida. 850 people there, total sellout, turn away crowd. Fair enough, it's free, everyone's getting in for free. But still, very enthusiastic audience, felt like a hot promotion.
Yeah, and boy did these guys love themselves some X Division Multi-Man Madness.
Which is what most of this show was, so you know what, they read that crowd properly.
So yeah, going into this month, one thing, and I think it's smart that they kind of saved him mostly for the Impact Zone. There was some of the pay-per-views, but Hector Garza feels like a guy.
Yeah, and they know he feels like a guy, and he's reached a deal where he'll be in most Wednesdays and Thursdays, and then work AAA on the weekends. But they do know very much what they have in Hector Garza, and we'll talk about why it doesn't work out for various reasons. But it is not for lack of trying here, because it's weird. The opening match, you would think, put Jarrett there, put Styles there, put Raven there. Raven's not even on the first episode, which is apparently a point of contention for Raven, that he wasn't best pleased that he wasn't on the first episode.
I don't think he's on any of the episodes of TV.
Yeah, because he gets injured early, and I think he gets injured in the dark match on the next episode of Impact. And again, he works that Sanjay match where he aggravates the injury and then is gone for most of the rest of the month, and I think a little while longer. I think he's out for 4 to 6 weeks.
Then the thing with Raven is, though, you just have him talk. Just like one of these Sabu segments that you did on TV, just throw them on this one, I think it'd be fine.
But yeah, it's interesting. They open with Hector Garza, Amazing Red, and Sanjay Dutt versus P. Williams, Eric Young, and Bobby Roode. So they're opening the show with 6 guys who, for the most part, Hector Garza did work WCW, but who for the most part have very little experience to the audience. It's not opening with the WWE guys. It is very much a statement of intent that we're putting 6 of our guys out here first. We're going to give them some time. They're going to tear the house down. They're going to have a real darn good 6-man tag.
Well, you look at this whole card and there's not really any WWE guys on it.
Yeah, you get nobody really. Well, there's Dusty and there's Jarrett in a promo and Truth. That's about it. In terms of the actual matches, it's all their homegrown talent.
Yeah, so I think it is a very good first step in. I am, and also just coming out of this personally after watching him for the last 6 months, I am so ready for a Hector Garza AJ Styles match, and if that match doesn't happen, I will be so depressed.
You'll have to see.
Ooh. But I thought this was a really good first impression for Impact, and having a crowd that actually cares helps too.
Yeah, I find that a lot for the TV. 1, the crowd is more interested, and 2, because the matches have like a 10-minute time limit.
It's so good.
And I think because the wrestlers know they're wrestling in front of a larger audience, both more enthusiastic in Orlando and obviously a larger television audience. We'll talk about the numbers in a little bit. But because of that, I do think the wrestlers have a lot more urgency on Impact than they do on the pay-per-views.
Oh, it also feels like, the pay-per-views are where all the big story beats happen, but this is where the better wrestling happens. And I think a part of that it's, the TV does feel more important, even though it's not treated to the same extent. By people's performances and aesthetically, and just watching as a viewer, the TV looks and feels better.
The wrestlers just seem more interested working the TV than they do working the pay-per-views.
They're also probably more excited to be working in Florida.
Anti-Nashville sentiment.
Well, and also they've been in Nashville for 2 years now, just a new environment that's probably a big change of not change of pace, but a change of scenery probably just helps them feel more revitalized.
And it's the first time, well, maybe not the first time, because the people who worked the very first TNA shows probably felt bigly, both the first ones in Nashville that were in the Municipal Auditorium and the first ones in Huntsville. But it's the first time in about 2 years that they probably go to work and it's like, oh, they see the big proper television studio with the lights and the pyro. It's like, oh, this actually feels like a major league television presentation as opposed to the Asylum, which is they can make it look relatively professional, but it's far from major league.
Well, the big thing is, it feels like they've gone from indie to that next level above. Because there was some of those Asylum shows looked so indie. And not even like indie in like the cool way. Like in the, this is like your local indie. But now it feels big and important, and there's production behind it, and there's a crowd that's going off for it. Like a crowd that's got signs and is into it, you know? That isn't just tnachat.com.
Doing the first, I think, This Is Awesome chance in company history.
Yeah, it was good all around. Everyone seemed to be having a lot more fun with the studio tapings.
Yeah, so Hector Garza pinned Bobby Roode here with the torneo.
Yeah, a fun little match here. I thought Team Canada would go over because they're such a pushed act at this point, but obviously they feel like they have something with Garza because they kind of do. Everyone's really into Garza.
Yeah, and they put Red here, even though he's not pushed whatsoever.
Yeah, I got some things about Red, but I'll save it till the last show.
Red does have a dodgy month. Abyss defeated Shark Boy squash match, Black Hole Slam, then Popeye after the match consoled Shark Boy for his loss.
I desperately want, they showed us a bit on some of the later episodes, but I desperately want more Popeye and Shark Boy hanging out at Universal Studios.
Yeah, they're wandering around, they're going down slides, they're having a good time at Universal Studios.
You know Shark Boy's like, I got a sweet gig with this right now.
You know, AEW should do this with Dark. They should have like Luther and Serpentico going around with whoever the current Universal Studios mascot is.
Yeah, that's good. That's good stuff.
AMW defeated Kid Cash and Dallas to become the NWA World Tag Team Champions for the 4th time.
Yeah, it's good to have the tag team titles on the best act in the company.
Yeah, putting them out front and center, doing a title change on the first episode to make it feel important, and, you know, going back to all of your kind of like 1A acts instead of some of the maybe like, actually there was nothing wrong with Cash and Dallas as tag champs. They're a good team and good wrestlers.
I've enjoyed Cash and Dallas together, but you know, I like having AMW as the tag team champions. I'm not gonna lie.
It just feels right, doesn't it?
Well, also they better than anyone else. AMW can make matches that you weren't excited for on the mid card of shows exciting.
Particularly perhaps against Monty Brown and Abyss. We'll talk about that in a minute. Mike Tenay introduced Dusty. They did like they went back to another classic TNA well, talking about tradition.
Tradition, and later on they introduced someone who's offended at how New York's been treated. So
all of the classic TNA stories.
Just no women in cages yet.
So yeah, Dusty's talking about tradition, and Jarrett comes out, calls Dusty old and washed up. He just says he's going to take 5 paces and Dusty better be gone. Dusty was not gone. Slapped him with his hat, started punching him. Jarrett makes a comeback, grabs a guitar. Truth makes the save, but Truth's a giant dork, so he gets hit with the guitar instead of Dusty before Trill K makes the actual save.
So we aren't at the peak, but we are firmly in Jeff Jarrett chair shot wee whoop time. Like, this is what, when people think of Jeff Jarrett, this is what they think of.
Yeah.
And they managed to kind of toe the line early on and not be this, but now we are firmly in it. I think there will be a time where it gets to almost the point of parody, but right now it's just earnest, which I don't know if that makes it worse or better, but we haven't gone to, we get the joke. This is just them doing it, and it's like over the top. Although there's a great payoff to it in the Truth match.
Yeah, and it's the guitar is the story of the month, but we'll talk about that when we're doing broad topics. But yeah, it's particularly egregious here, I think, because, you know, Jarrett goes to hit Dusty, Truth makes the save, and that's the end of your segment, you know?
Yeah.
You're literally doing it just so Jarrett can have the last laugh and Truth will look like a nerd on your television debut.
And we're hitting the second feud now. Maybe we should keep a tally as we go on. But this is the second Jarrett title feud where it feels like the only payoff worth having is him losing the title. But that isn't what happens.
Not for a very long time.
So we've had a first victim of not winning the title when they need to, Chris Harris. Second victim, Ron Killings. I'm sure we will see how this list progresses as we continue on.
They did a feature on the X Division. Then we have the new backstage interviewer, Shane Douglas. We'll talk about that in a sec. He wants to know who the 4th man in the main event is. He's asking Vince Russo. It's an X Division #1 contenders match. We know Chris Sabin, Neil Skipper, and Michael Shane are 3 of the 4. Turns out the 4th man returning to the X Division is the phenomenal AJ Styles.
Yeah, and I mean, listen. Am I happy that AJ Styles isn't, like, the NWA champion? No. But when he was sucked up in Vince Russo, Jeff Jarrett bullshit, so maybe just having him as the face of the X Division is just is better for him.
I know, like, TNA at the time would make the argument that the X Division is not lesser than its equal, which at this stage isn't true. I think AJ makes it true because he's fucking better than everybody else in the company. So by the time we reach 2005, I think AJ single-handedly makes that true, and maybe even the X Division is greater than rather than lesser than. So, like, here it is very clear, shunted down to the X Division, not across. But also, I think you're right that he's just better off here, where you can have good matches with good wrestlers and not have to deal with the endless slew of bullshit that comes with guitar shots and hidden guitars and multiple authority figures and all the nonsense that comes with Jeff Jarrett, comes with Vince Russo, comes with the main event scene. He can just be AJ. And I think this month, more than any month, he is AJ. Like, he is the AJ of TNA that you know. Like, the TNA ace AJ Styles. He feels like that this month.
And, like, you just look at it. Would you rather be AJ Styles this month or Ron Killings this month?
That's a very easy answer.
So, there you go. Which position is it better to be in?
Yeah, so Styles pins Shane with the Styles Clash. Kazarian comes down, stare down AJ because they'll face for the title on the next pay-per-view. That's the first episode of Impact. As I said, I thought this was a really good statement of intent. I was going to say it's a good representation of what TNA is. I think it's almost a misrepresentation of what TNA is.
It's a representation of what TNA could be and what a lot of people maybe wanted TNA to be and what TNA complains that their fans don't perceive TNA to be.
It's like, hey, you did it for a night. How about you do it every night?
Which I think, I mean, that's every company, right? That's every company, especially in American pro wrestling, ever. It's like, when they hit it, you're like, why can't you hit it all the time?
Because you had like guys like Garza, guys like Abyss, guys like MW, guys like AJ being the featured acts as well as Jarrett. And it felt hot, it felt high energy, it was a really fast hour of wrestling. It was, I think, as perfect of a debut episode as they could have asked for.
Like I said, it's a good representation for a lot of people who may have seen them for the first time. I wonder how many pay-per-views this sold, though.
Yeah, I would say not very many, and I think ultimately the answer is not very many.
Yeah. I don't know if I saw this, I was like, oh man, I have to tune in the pay-per-view just to see what happened with 3LK and Jeff Jarrett.
I'm sure, like, the first few got a curiosity bump. And especially because, like, the anniversary show was at least, like, a very hard-pushed show, which is the third or fourth show of the month. So I'm sure a couple of those got a little bit of a boost. And, like, the Asylum attendances went up, and the Asylum energy went up a little bit. But I think by the time you get to July, people are just happy watching their Impact and happy avoiding the weekly pay-per-views.
Yeah, and to be fair, I think the anniversary pay-per-view did feel big. I don't think it necessarily hit everything out of the park, but I was watching it and I was like, this does feel like a big, important show.